Shalom, and welcome to Jewish Traditions Across the Centuries. I'm Rabbi Anne Heath. I serve Congregation Agudath Achim, and I say, Baruchim Habaim, welcome to all, for information learning about this wonderful Jewish holiday, this holy day called Tu B'Shvat. You might imagine that you can't understand why it's called Tu B'Shvat. You haven't heard of it before. If you're Jewish, you may know a little about it, but if you're not Jewish, it's probably pretty obscure. Shvat is one of the Jewish months, and it occurs around the middle of January through the middle of February, in the middle of winter. Tu is not the numeral two that we know in English. It's a Rashi Tevot, an abbreviation for Tet and Vav, two letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And letters of the Hebrew alphabet are used for counting. The Tet is worth 9, and the Vav is worth 6. Together, they add up to 15. So Tu B'Shvat is the 15th of the month of Shvat. And it is a day that's used for calculating how old a tree is. Why do we care how old a tree is? Well, according to Jewish tradition, back in the times of the Mishnah, at the beginning, around the beginning of the Common Era, somewhat before that, but beyond that, the New Year of the Trees was calculated so that offerings in the temple would be done appropriately. If you planted a tree sometime before the 15th of Shvat, it would have its birthday on the 15th of Shvat. A tree had to be at least 3 years old before its produce would be eligible to be offered for tithes in the 4th year, and in the 5th year, it would be eligible for everyone to eat from it. Now, this sounds a little complicated. Why do we need to tithe the fruit? It's easy to take a look at that if we see King David's prayer in the book of Chronicles. It reminds us that David says, "Who am I and what is my people that we should be able to offer you any kind of offering? Because, God, all things come of thee, and of thine own have we given thee." And actually, that's a classic verse that Christians use for grace before meals. So it is that complete idea that all of the fruits of the earth belong to God, and that we are stewards of them and should care for them. Across the centuries, especially in the 15th century, this celebration of Tu B'Shvat changed from being not only one related to the tithing of fruits, but one that now ties the fruits of the world to the fruit of Torah, the fruit of God's Word. We understand that Torah is the tree of life. So let's take a look at what's in front of me, and I'm going to pull up a Tu B'Shvat Seder. You probably have heard of a Passover Seder. Seder means order. And so our rabbis and sages and educators and teachers have come up with a variety of ways to teach us about the holiday of Tu B'Shvat. So let's get started. It says the main idea of a Tu B'Shvat Seder is that God is the source of all life and that every piece of life is valuable. And you can see that I have lots of pieces of life here on the table, including a small cup of grape juice. I could also use white wine, and then darker grape juice. These Seder plates, some people put them on one plate, some separate them to 4. Because there are 4 cups of wine that we use for the Passover Seder, the Kabbalists, our mystical sages, have decided that it would make sense to organize a Tu B'Shvat Seder also with 4 cups. So when we have the first cup of wine, this first cup of white grape juice, we're continuing this ancient tradition, and let's see what this Seder reminds us of about our environment, not only our physical environment, but our spiritual. The first cup is all white juice. It reminds us of winter when the earth is often covered with snow. Together we recite the blessing over wine, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Praised are you, Lord God, ruler of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. Whenever we celebrate something for the first time in a year, or even a special occasion, we have an all-purpose blessing, thanking God for bringing us to this day. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu, v'higianu lazman hazeh. Praised are you, Lord God, ruler of the universe, who has strengthened us, kept us alive, and allowed us to reach this very day. If we were to segregate these into 4 plates, what would we find on the first plate? Well, let's take a look. We begin by eating fruits from a plate where there are peels or shells that cannot be eaten. So, for example, you'll see over here there's a tangelo, a Mineola tangelo. Some people call them Mineola oranges. And this is a fruit where we don't eat the outside. Same thing for the banana, and same thing as well as for the pomegranate. And these are fruits. We consider these kinds of fruits to symbolize earth, air, water, and fire. So you can see the mystical elements of Judaism, elements that are present in other faiths and other traditions, especially those that are acknowledging the power of creation and how we are to integrate our lives with it because we are one just as God is one. Then we would do the blessing for the eating of fruit, and this would be borei peri ha'etz. These are fruits of the tree, and we might then continue with some stories. When we get ready for a second cup of wine, we pour a bit of red wine, a bit of red grape juice, into this cup. And so it gets a little darker this time. Not a lot, just a little darker. This symbolizes the spring, when the land changes colors. And so there is a seasonal nature here, and the first flowers appear. So we would again repeat the blessing over wine, which ends in borei peri hagafen, and we would turn to see what's on the second plate of our Seder. So the first time we had fruits where we could eat the inside, which was soft and fleshy, but we didn't eat the outside. Now on the second plate, or on the second set of fruits, it's just the opposite. We find those, like these prunes or plums, where we can eat the outside, but not the inside. If we were putting this together with the widest variety of fruits possible, what could we use? Peaches, plums, avocados, dates, olives, cherries, apricots, mangoes. You can think of more, but these are the fruits that have a tough outer core, tough inner core, and a soft outer part. And when we do this, we remember our inner selves. We remember our hearts, our steadfast inner selves, and that we can remain strong even when difficult things happen on the outside. So, first cup was white. First fruits had skin on the outside. Second cup has a little bit of red in it. And now our fruits for the second plate, the second set of fruits, had all of the tough part in the middle. Third cup. A little bit more, making our grape juice a little darker. Again, many people use grape juice because they prefer not to use alcohol, but kosher wine, for those who do use alcohol, wine is certainly a very appropriate part, and there are beautiful wines that can be found from the land of Israel. Now our juice is a little darker. Think of the bright sun in the summer. Think of the brightly colored flowers. Everything is not the kind of beautiful, soft, riotous colors that we get in spring, but the really chazak, the strong ones, green peppers, red peppers, fruits that are brilliant. And so we would again do the blessing over this cup of wine, of grape juice, and take a look at which fruits are in our third category. And there are those that can be eaten whole. We've got raisins. We eat raisins whole. We eat berries whole. Strawberries, grapes, raisins, figs, raspberries, blueberries, cranberries, all of those kinds of fruits that we eat all the way through. Apples. Apples, we all eat the peels, even though some of us don't quite like the hard middle. The hard middle, just the small seeds in an apple, are not at all like the really tough seeds that we find. I had a friend once who purchased an apple and he ate the whole thing. There was no core. And most of us looked at him and said, "Sam, why'd you eat the whole thing?" He said, "I paid 99 cents for this apple. I'm not going to let any of it go to waste." And that truly is how we consider all of the fruits of God's earth, that we don't want anything to go to waste. So, 3 different categories of fruits. And we now move to the 4th cup of wine. The 4th cup of wine reminds us of fall. And here in New England, we know the strong, strong colors of fall, the dark reds, the dark auburns, the dark golds and yellows and oranges, and it's the beginning of fall. And we've made it through the seasons, and we finally get to the remainders of all of the fruitfulness of the year, and we end up with seeds. You'll see here that we have some sunflower seeds. Seeds represent the 4th element of nature, fire, and something as small as a seed can be very powerful. It can grow into a beautiful sunflower. If you've driven through Oklahoma or the Midwest or through parts of the land of Israel, you go by fields and fields of sunflowers, and they're incredibly beautiful, and they all come from a very small seed. Seeds also symbolize life, and in our generation, they tie us to environmental concerns, to keeping us in touch with the fact that none of these precious fruits will endure if we poison our air, poison our water, or poison our land. Because by doing so, even if we feel like those things are outside of ourselves, we take all of this into ourselves, and it becomes one with us as our bodies absorb the nutrients that are so graciously a part of God's eternal system of nature and life. So in our synagogue, in many synagogues around the world, something akin to this Tu B'Shvat Seder is included. Some people have it very fun and lively, and there are songs with children. Some have it at a very adult level, where there is mysticism included, and prayers, and a great deal of thoughtful discussion. One of the purposes of having a holiday such as this is not only to observe a Jewish tradition from across the centuries, but to bring new life to it today. We're not remembering the days gone by in our history. We are reliving it, re-experiencing it, reenacting it, so that it becomes our own. There are, as you might imagine, wonderful books for children to help them not only understand the holiday, but to get to their minds and their hearts in the frame of reference, especially about trees, whether it's the vine that provides the fruit for small grapes, or whether it's large trees that provide us things like apples and bananas and tangelos. All of those trees, large and small, are things for us to treasure and to teach our children about. As we take a look at the literature available for young people, literature that trips over the lips and is wonderful to listen to and to speak, things that are interesting to hear, things to learn. First, let's take a look at a very well-known book, The Giving Tree by Shel, Silverstein. The most important thing about this book, besides being a classic and one that has multiple levels of interpretation, despite its simplicity, is it's a chance for me to remind you that if English is not your native language, you can find it in other editions. I believe it's been published in at least 20 different languages, and here is the edition published in Hebrew. So rather than The Giving Tree, it's Ha'etz HaNadiv. The pictures are the same. Hebrew letters go not the wrong way, but the Hebrew way. So rather than the book opening the way we're used to with English, it opens on the other side. So do look for wonderful books about Tu B'Shvat or about nature and the environment in a language that matches one that you're comfortable teaching and reading. Also, you could use it as a simple book to learn a new language. For those of you for whom the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament is something that you like to teach from, Green Bible Stories for Children. This begins with the story of creation, as indicated in the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. Variety is the spice of life, a story from Noah's Ark. Greener pastures, Abraham and sustainable herding. Preventing famine, the story of Joseph planning ahead. Sweet water from a tree, Moses in the desert. Reduce, reuse, recycle, building the tabernacle. And so it goes, this wonderful book called Green Bible Stories for Children. Not only are the stories told, but then projects are included so that if you wanted to do a small science project, whether you're homeschooling a student, whether you're working on a project with your teacher, whether you and your family and your relatives have a real yearning to do something positive for the environment and tie it to a faith that's important to you, I encourage you to consider this book. Specifically for Tu B'Shvat, Grandpa and Me on Tu B'Shvat. This is a book not unlike the books that we know where things are added on. For example, the short story, the short poetic reading, very classic. This is the house that Jack built. This is the house that Jack built. This is the this, this is the this, and this is the house that Jack built. And that's the same thing that happens in this book. This is the seed playing peekaboo that hid in the fruit, which, right on cue, grew on the branch. What a great bird's eye view that reached over the picnic we ate, wouldn't you? In the shade of the tree and the tree's feathered crew that once was a sapling, from the small seed it grew, that drank up the water, splish splashy and blue, that moistened the soil, rich through and through, that covered the seed with a green curlicue, tucked into the peat, a warm, mulchy stew, that lined the hole, but that you knew, that we dug in the grass neath a blanket of dew, that was cleared with the shovel, shiny and new, by Grandpa and me on Tu B'Shvat. This is Grandpa's shovel, now rusty and worn, that I used to dig a hole on Tu B'Shvat morn, to be certain this tiny new seed is sown, just me and a grandchild of my own. So we all know, those of us who love trees, who plant trees, we understand that trees are our gift to subsequent generations. In the land of Israel, beginning in the early 1900s, Jews began donating to the Jewish National Fund so that trees could be planted. 250,000 trees have been planted in the past 115 years. Conservation, parks, waterways, dams, all kinds of things to enhance the environment in the land of Israel. A tree is nice. Trees are very nice. They fill up the sky. They go beside the rivers and down the valleys. They live up on the hills. Trees make the woods. They make everything beautiful. Even if you have just one tree, it is nice too. A tree is nice because it has leaves. The leaves whisper in the breeze all summer long. In the fall, the leaves come down and we play in them. We walk in the leaves and roll in the leaves. We build playhouses out of the leaves. Then we pile them up with our rakes and have a bonfire. A tree is nice because it has a trunk and limbs. We can climb the tree and see over all the yards. We can sit on a limb and think about things, or play pirate ship up in the tree. If it is an apple tree, we can climb it to pick the apples. Cats get away from dogs by going up the tree. Birds build nests in trees and live there. Sticks come off the trees too. We draw in the sand with the sticks. A tree is nice to hang a swing in, or a basket of flowers. It is a good place to lean your hoe while you rest. A tree is nice because it makes shade. The cows lie down in the shade when it is hot. People have picnics there too, and the baby takes his nap in his buggy in the shade. A tree is nice for a house to be near. The tree shades the house and keeps it cool. The tree holds off the wind and keeps the wind from blowing the roof off the house sometimes. A tree is nice to plant. You dig the biggest hole you can and put the little tree in. Then you pour in lots of water and then the dirt. You hang the shovel back in the garage. Every day for years and years, you watch the little tree grow. You say to people, "I planted that tree." They wish they had one, so they go home and plant a tree too. Our last book today, Netta and Her Plant, by Ellie B. Gelman, illustrated by Natasha Ugliano. It's Tu B'Shvat today, her teacher explained. Your name, Netta, means plant, and now is the time to plant. We can plant this seedling together. Netta brought her plant home. Her Ima, her mother, put it on the small table in the living room. We can take care of it together, she said. Netta liked to play in the living room. She put together puzzles and built a tower with her blocks. Netta tried to make the tower as tall as her plant. Plants like to hear music, said Ima. So Netta sang her favorite songs while she played. The plant grew. Netta grew. It was Tu B'Shvat again. Ima said to Netta, "You are too big for your little bed. It's time to buy you a bigger one." Ima and Abba, her mother and father, took Netta to the furniture store. They bought a big bed. Netta picked out a quilt covered with trees and plants and flowers. When they got home, Netta looked at her plant. "You are too big for that pot," she said. "You need a bigger pot." So Ima and Abba took Netta to the garden shop to buy a bigger pot. They helped her put the plant in the new pot and add new dirt. Netta took her crayons and drew trees and plants and flowers on a piece of paper and wrapped it around the new pot. The plant grew. Netta grew. On her birthday, Netta came home from school wearing a crown of flowers. She carefully lifted it off her head and put it around her plant. "Now you can celebrate too," Netta said. The plant grew. Netta grew. Then something surprising happened. Her Ima grew too. Just after school ended for the summer, Netta had a little sister. Her name was Avital. Abba explained that tal is the word for dew. He told her dew helps to water plants so that they can grow. Ima was very busy taking care of Avital, but Netta didn't mind. She was busy taking care of her plant. Savta, her grandmother, came over and helped Netta water the plant by herself without spilling. Then she helped Savta give Avital a drink of water, and she didn't spill any. The plant grew. Netta grew. One day, Ima and Abba told Netta that they were moving to a new, bigger house. It was too crowded in their apartment. Netta wasn't sure she wanted to move. "It will be okay," Ima said. "In the new house, you will have your own room." Netta told her plant that soon they would be moving. "You don't have to be afraid. It will be okay. And in the new house, you will have your own room." On moving day, Netta hurried to help Ima put her special quilt on the bed in her new bedroom. Then she put the plant on the porch. "You will be the first one to see the sun every morning," she said. The plant grew. Netta grew. The summer was over, and it was time for kindergarten. Netta wasn't sure she wanted to go to a new school. Abba told her that she was big enough and that she would make new friends. Netta went out to the porch to talk to her plant. Its leaves leaned past the edge of the pot, and the stem reached above the railing. "You've grown so much, it's time for you to go live by yourself," Netta said. "Tomorrow, before I start my new school, Abba will help me plant you in a garden where you can make new friends." Netta and Abba put the plant in a big basket. They walked across 2 streets and turned a corner. Behind Netta's new school was a park. They chose a sunny spot and planted Netta's plant beside a tall tree. The plant grew. Netta grew. On the first day of kindergarten, Netta took a friend to meet her plant. "This is Ilana, my new friend," she said to the plant. Ilana means tree. "Look at all the trees that grow in this park. They will be your friends. When it's Tu B'Shvat again, the trees will have a birthday, and so will you. Ilana and I will come to visit you with all of our new friends, and we will have a party." And that is what they did. Ilana's name means tree, and Tu B'Shvat is known as Chag HaIlanot, the festival of trees. And that is what Netta and her friends had, was a wonderful party, a Chag HaIlanot, celebrating the trees. And so as we wrap up this edition of Jewish Tradition Across the Centuries, speaking about Tu B'Shvat, the birthday of the trees, imagine that you are a tree, looking at your neighboring trees, knowing that they may be the same kind of tree as you are, but they are still very different and unique. Netta learned how a very small plant can eventually grow from safety within a house to being planted outside. The same thing happens in the wilderness. And we know as we age, we won't live forever. Some trees last a long time, and we hope we will too. One of the things you might remember is that trees, when a tree stands by itself, it's very susceptible to wind. But when a tree stands with a group of other trees, when the winds come and when the weather is bad, it can not only protect the growing trees beneath it, but when they're standing together firm, they can weather a lot of difficulties. So as our rabbis and sages from generations past have taken the stories from our tradition, may you take this story as well. When we stand together, each one of us can support the other despite our very obvious differences, but together we can succeed, and there is great power and great synergy. Ken Yehi Ratzon, thus may it ever be so. Shalom.